So, hello and welcome to BISP Solutions. My name is Anjali. So, in today's session, we are going to see how to write the cash flow template using business rules. And at the end of our session, after we are done with writing cash flow template, we are also going to see a small function at the rate xref, which copies the data and moves the data between the cubes. All right, so let's get started with today's session. So, before moving ahead, first, we need to understand what do you mean by cash flow and what are the methods of cash flows. So cash flow basically means net amount of cash and cash equivalent being transferred in and out of a company. So it is a company's ability to create value for shareholder is fundamentally determined by the ability to generate positive cash flow or specifically to maximize long-term free cash flows. And what do you mean by free cash flows? Free cash flow is cash generated by a company from its normal business operations after subtracting money spent on capital expenditure. So we have two types of cash flows. One is direct cash flow, in which I can do the bifurcation as sources of cash and uses of cash. But when we talk about indirect cash flows, it is bifurcated into three types of activities. First one is operating, another one is investing, and the third is financing activity. So, what do you mean by operating activity? Money flows involved directly with the production and sale of goods from ordinary items. So, this includes day to day transactions, production and sales from day to day transactions. So, this is operating activity. Next is investing activity. It means how much cash has been generated from various investment related activities. All right. And the third one is financing activities, which means net flows of cash that are used to fund the company and its capital. Okay. So basically, when we talk about financial statements, we have balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow. So in balance sheet, it is a one-time snapshot of a company's assets and liabilities. When we talk about income statement, it is business profitability during a certain period. But when we talk about cash flows, it acts as a corporate checkbook that reconcile the other two statements, which means balance sheet and income statement. So now let's proceed with writing business rule for cash flow template. So let us go to our PBCS vision application where we are going to write the business rule. So this is the interface for vision application. In this, we will go to navigator and from here we'll go to rules part. So before moving ahead, let me just show you the structure of the dimensions, what all dimensions we have. All right. So basically, in all accounts, we have balance sheet members. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to open few accounts. So what all accounts we have over here? As we all know that balance sheet shows the closing figures of the ledger accounts. But if we want to see any change in any operating, investing and financing activity for any two periods, we can use cash flow template with the help of a business rule. For example, I want to see the changes in cash and short-term equivalents. All right. So that for that I can see in cash flow statement. Next, if I want to see any change for this account receivable, I can do that in the cash flow. I can compare the two figures of the two periods, All right. Then next we have other current assets. Similarly, it goes for inventory. So basically, the activities of financing, investing, and operating, all these three calculates the figures of the respective accounts. So when we'll go to cash flow, expand cash in ending balance, we are going to drill down total cash flow. So as we can see it over here, under total cash flows, I have net cash from operations, net cash used in investing, and net cash provided by financing. Okay, so when we'll drill down the net cash from operations, I have following accounts: cash from current operations and changes in assets and liabilities. All right. When I will drill down this account, cash from current operations, I will see net income, which is a shared member, this total depreciation and amortization, which is also a shared member, gain or loss on retirement. So these are all shared members. Next, let's see the changes in assets and liabilities. So I have changes in accounts receivables, changes in inventory, change in prepaid. So all these changes in these accounts, like accounts receivables, inventory, prepaid, accounts payable, accrued liabilities, I can see over here. Okay, so this was about operations from operating activity. Next, we move ahead to net cash used in investing activities. So as I've already told you, the net cash from investing activity, it means how much cash has been generated or spent from various investment related activities of the organization. So in net cash used in investing activity, I have proceed from asset sales. If they have sold an asset, here you can see the proceeds from the sale of that particular asset. Okay. Next, we have capital equipment purchases. This means this is an outflow. So any equipment purchased will be shown over here in the investing activity since it is for the long term use. Now, the third one is changes in other assets. So this shows we have if any other changes in any other asset, it is shown under this. All right. Then we'll move ahead towards net cash provided from financing activity. So as I have already told you, the net flows of cash that are used to fund the company and its capital are under the financing activity. So as we can see here, any kind of increase or decrease in long-term debt is shown under net cash provided by financing activity. Any kind of issuance or repurchase of common stock is also shown under net cash provided by financing activity. And any changes in any other equity is also shown under net cash provided by financing activity. All right. So now we are familiar with all these terms. So we'll move ahead with writing the rule for this. So I've already prepared a rule and we'll see step by step what I have done in that rule. All right. So basically this is the rule which I have written for cash flow template. So under fix, I have used base data as my HSP view, and ampersand current year is the substitution variable which I have used. Ampersand next year is the another substitution variable which I have used, and another substitution variable which I have used over here is current version. Then plan and revised plan. All right. Then I am nesting this and I have fixed my entity as 000 and my product as P000. Then in next, so now in comment I have provided here is the starting of the template, okay, for cash flow. So at first I have given the account name change in accounts receivable, and then in the next line I have given all the is descendants of year total, and I have used the function at the rate prior. So what this is going to do, this is going to take the data from the previous account of 1200, and it will deduct it to current figure. Similarly, I have used it for inventory, prepaid, accounts payable, other accrued liabilities. So these were all the resulting activities from operating. Okay, so next we will move towards capital equipment. So what do we have in that? As I've already shown you in our hierarchy, that capital equipment purchases. Let me just show you again. So as you can see here in investing activity, capital equipment purchases. So if we have purchased any equipment for the organization for long term use, which means it is we are holding it for the period of 12 months or more, so we have to put it under the head net cash used in investing activity for the cash flow. Okay, so capital equipment purchases at the rate prior. So this is the account number which I have put. So what it is going to do, it is going to deduct the previous period figure from the current period's figure. All right, and changes in other assets, increase or decrease in long term debt. So as we have already discussed, increase or decrease in long term debt, common stock and other equity. If we are talking about any member of the shareholders fund, this will come under financing activity. So long term debt, common stock and other equity comes under financing activity, and I have used the same function over here for this. Okay, so then I'm ending my rule, and next what I have done over here, fix at the rate I descendants of cash flow and calc them for entity. So what this function is going to do, it will roll up all the members and the values to the parent, which is the cash flow. Okay, now let's see this practically. So I have already prepared a rule. We are going to open this rule. All right, so we have already discussed this rule. We are simply going to launch it. All right, so next step is, what we have to do is, basically I have prepared a form to validate the figures. We'll go to forms and I'll show you the form which I have prepared. So under this I have this form, cash flow test. All right, so as you can see here, in rows I have the accounts. In my column I have year total, in which I can see the periods. All right, then in point of view I have HSP view, the scenario, my entity. All right, the financial year, version and the product. All right, so this is the form which I have prepared, and let's go and validate the figures with our rule. We are not going to test it over here. Let's simply go to the home page and we'll go to data. For that I will open a calculator, or I can simply do this in my Excel sheet. Let me just show you the form first. All right, so this is the form, cash flow underscore test. All right, so I have various figures over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to validate just few figures. To save our time, we'll just validate few figures, but you all will understand how this calculation is done. So basically these are the balance sheet accounts, 1200, 1300 inventory. Okay, and these are the cash flow accounts, changes, any kind of change in accounts receivable, inventory, accounts payable, prepaid, accrued liabilities. So these all are my cash flow accounts, and these are my balance sheet accounts. So what our business rule is doing, it is showing the figures, or it is showing the total figures of these particular accounts, and in the cash flow you can see the change. All right, so let's open any Excel sheet and we will validate it. So let's do it over here. So let's do this first for this account, accounts receivable. So what I should get the difference of these two over here in February. All right. So the difference of January and February will be shown over here. All right. So let's open the Excel sheet. Okay. Now I'm just going to simply write down the figures. I will write down the figure for January. I have 422202 403. Let's ignore the decimal for, we'll test the main amounts. So we'll get an idea whether we are getting correct figures or not. In February, I have 29332 429. Okay. So the figure of January, we are deducting it by the figure of February of the balance sheet account. So this will show us the change. Any change in this account will be shown and will be reflected in the cash flow account of this particular account, which is accounts receivable. All right. So as you can see here, this amount of 128,699,74 is being correctly shown here. So the business rule which we just ran is correct. All right. Now this was for accounts receivable. Now let's take another member. Let's take any member from investing activity. So investing activity is capital equipment purchases, and the balance sheet member for this is asset cost and clearing total. So I'm going to write it over here, investing activity, and Jan and Feb. So in Jan month, in the balance sheet, the amount is 147,874,960. All right. And in the February month, I have 147,874,960, which is the equivalent to the January amount. So if we'll deduct this, we'll see the zero amount over here. So as we can see in the month of February, it is zero reflected over here. Now let's take another account of financing activity and we will test this. So it is long-term liability. So any change in this account will be shown over here in the cash flow, which is account number increase or decrease in long-term debt. So let's open this Excel sheet and write it over here, financing activity. All right. So for Jan month and for Feb month, I am going to test this. To save this, to save our time, I am doing this only for few accounts. 43770 in January month and 4377. It is actually clearly visible that the difference is zero, but just for our testing purpose, I am showing it to you that this is how it is done. So as you can see here, the figure is zero in financing activity. So in February, so this month, February is reflecting any change in this account. All right. So this is how you can write the business rule template for business rule for cash flow template. All right. So this was the form which I have already created, in which I have done all the validation. So this was all for cash flow templates. Now we will move towards the function which I was talking about, @xref function. So first, let's read the meaning of this function, and then we'll move ahead with understanding it, like how to use it practically in our application. So what do you mean and how do you use @xref function? So this function enables a database calculation to incorporate values from another S-based database. The following terminology is used to describe the @xref function. Data target, the database on which the current calculation is running. That is, the database on which the @xref call originates. Then the data source, the database that is queried by the @xref function. This database may be remote, that is, on a different machine than the data target. Then point of view, the member combination currently being calculated on the data target. That is, the member combination that identifies the left-hand side of a calculation. The XREF function retrieves value from the data source to be used in the calculation on a data target. So this function does not impose member and dimension mapping restriction, which means that the data source and the data target outlines can be different. As arguments, this function takes a location alias, an implied list of members that represents the current point of view, and an optional list of members to qualify the XREF query on the data source. The second argument, the member making up the current point of view, is implied. That is, these members are not specified as an XREF parameter. An XREF query that omits the third argument indicates that a given data point in the data target will be set to the same data point in the data source. And the syntax which we use for this function is location alias and then member list in brackets. All right. So let's go to our application. All right. So first I'll show you the location alias. So we will get to see the location alias in database properties. Under actions, we choose database properties. We will drill down the EPM cloud. And since I'm working on Vision, I'll click on this and I'll drill down the Vision application. Right click on plan 1 and then I will choose location alias. All right. So as you can see here, these are the various aliases. All right. So what I'll be doing is I'll be using two cubes over here, plan 1 and plan 2. All right. So basically in plan 1, I have following accounts and in plan 2, I have following accounts. And I want to copy the data of these accounts from plan 2 to accounts on the left hand side of plan 1. So how do you do that? So let's go to the application. So let me just show you the business rule which I have written for this function. Okay, so we'll see this. So HSP view is base data. I have fixed this. Then nesting it. Then another fix, I have used the entity 000. Product is P underscore 000. And the scenario which I have used over here is actual. All right. So these are the accounts 5800, which is existing on plan 1. So what I am doing over here is I am copying the data from this account 4113 which exists on plan 2 to the target account which is 5800. Next 4114, whatever data I'll have on this account on plan 2 will get copied to this account of plan 1 which is 6145. Another account of plan 2 is 4115. So this will get copied to 6160 and 4116 will get copied to 6140 of plan 1. So what are these accounts? So basically what I am doing over here is I am copying the data of salaries, workers compensation insurance, other compensation, and last health and welfare. These accounts, the data from these accounts, I will be copying it to plan 1 database. Okay, so this was the business rule which I have written for that. So let's go to a calculation manager. And as you can see here, this business rule, which I have already written over here, let's just launch this and we are going to test this in our smart view. First, we are going to open the rule. All right. So let's just launch it and open the Excel sheet. All right. So I have already prepared the smart view over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put figures in these accounts, and then all the data will get copied to these accounts of plan 1. So this is plan 1 and this is plan 2. All right. So launch status is successful. Now let's enter the figures over here. Okay, so all right. So these are the figures and we are going to submit these figures first. All right. Now we'll go to plan 1 and we will refresh the cube. First, we need to launch it again. So as you can see here, the data from these accounts of salaries, workers' compensation insurance, other compensation, and health and welfare is copied to the plan 1 cube. So this is how you can use XREF function. So another method for transferring the data or copying the data between the cubes or move the data between the cubes is Smart Push, and this is just another way of doing it. So I hope you all understood it. So that's all for today. Thank you and have a great day ahead.